Second language learners. Another term that we are going to challenge in this module is the term second language learners. This is a term that you are quite familiar with and must have come across several times during the course of your study. Now, the thing to keep in mind when we discuss this term second language learner is that this term is often used in a derogatory way, or if not in a derogatory way, to somehow highlight a deficiency in the proficiency of the second language learning. That is, this person is still learning the second language and does not have full command over it. Now, what happens at times is that when bilinguals are translanguaging, that is switching from one language to the other, because they tend to use all the linguistic repertoire to which they have access, this term or the idea that this construct can give can lead to this misconception that the child does not know the language, and then the child is actually, that is why, coining a different word or supplementing a word from his or her native language. So the case of Pablo, when the child actually was misinterpreted by a teacher who was quite experienced, is a case in this regard. And then there is also this question: until what point will the migrant children be considered as speakers of that language or the users of that language and not referred to as second language speakers or second language learners? So is there a criteria after which we start calling them as native speakers or somebody who actually knows the language rather than only a second language learner? That is a big question. And then there is a question about recursive bilinguals. Let me remind you what recursive bilinguals are. Recursive bilinguals are bilinguals that are trying to revitalize a language that belongs to their ancestors and trying to revive it by using or reusing certain aspects of it to perform certain functions in this world. So will we call them second language learners? Are they learning a second language if they are trying to revive an old language? Because over here we need to keep in mind that certain aspects of that language are revived, and it's not like a whole language is all of a sudden reused. Cultural, again, a term that a person or an author very well known in social linguistics, you might have come across her writings, talks about 3 concentric circles that describe the speakers of English language. So the first innermost circle, she says, comprises of countries or of places where the native speakers of English are. The second circle, the outer circle, would be the circle of countries where English language is used for within that country context. So over here, she refers to people as the speakers of second language of English as second language. The outer circle, that is the circle that lies at the periphery, she describes them as those who are still learning the language. Now, these concentric circles and the boundaries between them have been challenged because, again, in this world, constantly people are learning and using the language together. So there is no point at which you can say, all right, now you know the language, you are not a learner now, and you are a speaker of that language. And having said that, also keep in mind that even for our first language, we are constantly learning our language through the lifespan, and language learning does not stop at any time. So the new understanding is that instead of calling these people second language learners or speakers, it is best to call them emergent bilinguals. That is, they are moving across a continuum from which they are gaining proficiency from the starting point A to the targeted point B without actually shedding off their first language. So what helps us over here is that it allows us to see bilinguality as a norm, translanguaging as a norm, and not an error. So we will not say that if somebody is using the first language or translanguaging, that is because of certain deficiency in his or her language proficiency. So we talked about emergent bilinguals who try to move across a continuum, and we, you, all of us, actually constantly sharpen our language skills as we move on in life. And then this big question has to be kept in mind whenever you come across this term of second language learner. How do you decide if this person is not now a second language learner, but actually a speaker of that language? So is it the accent? If it is the accent, that means we are again moving ahead with this ideology of this native speaker, which is strongly challenged because second language learners is now considered a negative term.